There are over 400 built-in functions in Excel. The if function is amongst the most powerful of them. It's like a threshold function. It basically opens a door to a new and more expansive use of Excel. It's a lot like programming in nature. It enables us to come up with different answers depending upon the conditions. In this worksheet, we're trying to calculate the shipping cost. In cell C4, there's a description indicating that there's no shipping charge for orders over $1,500. All the others have shipping costs, which is 2% of the total. The data in column F and column H shows there's a formula which could be adding on the shipping cost. A shipping cost needs to be calculated but is not always going to be the same. In some cases it'll be 0, and other cases it'll be 2% of the cost. The if function answer will fit into column G. To see it clearly on the screen, we'll make the column wider and zoom in using the zoom button. The if function asks us to set up a logical test. The if function contains 3 arguments or parameters. The first one is a logical test. Many times you want to compare 2 different cells, and other times compare cells with a value. Sometimes you're comparing a cell with a formula or formula with text. So a number of options here. If we want to compare cell F7, we can click or type to see if it's greater than 1500. Yeah, so now what happens if it's exactly 1500? Above in the description it says if it's over 1500, and if it means to include 1500, then we want the description to read greater than followed by equal to. This will then be read as if F7 is greater than or equal to. So you have to be particular about whether something should or should not be there. Sometimes you use the less than arrow, sometimes the equal by itself, and occasionally if you're checking to see if 2 entries are not equal to one another, then you use the less than and greater than arrow together, which means not equal to. Here we want to use the 2 symbols together in this order. Below this is the logical test, but as we put in a comma here, we finish the logical test and it focuses on value if true. This can be a formula, a cell reference, a pure value, or a text entry. When this is true, we just want to have a shipping cost of 0, comma. When it's not true, when the amount here is less than 1500, we want this to be 2% of the total cost. Now you can type it as 2% times the cost. Now 2% of the cost could involve portions of pennies. You may need to use a function called round. We don't always use the round function along with the if function, but in this case it makes sense. The round function allows you to take the calculation and by putting a comma here, then indicate the number of decimal places that you want to round the calculation to. Here we want the calculation to be to the nearest penny, so that will be 2 decimal places. So we want a right parenthesis for the round portion of this and a final parenthesis for the if portion. When I press enter, we see 2% of the $49. It's always best to test out these formulas in a few cells first to make sure they're working. So let's try this. So we encounter a value over 1500, we get 0. So that's the equivalent of 0. If we change the format of this, we will see 0. This would be the case if there's no shipping charge. Once you've checked these, double-click the lower right-hand corner and copy the formula to the bottom. We don't necessarily need to have this column as wide as it is, so we just double-click it to put it back in its previous location. The if function gives us quick capabilities to alternative answers based on conditions in the worksheet.